right, back here with the Steve Deace Show. It's like we never left. 22 hours goes by fast here. Greetings, welcome. We are live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre. We are brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company. They've got a flavor for every freedom-loving American. They put the roast on date right there in every bag so that you can see it is shipped to you within days of being roasted so that you don't miss out on that. Use my name, firstcup.com, promo code DACE to get a discount. And don't just go there because they have your values. Particularly, don't get suckered. Even on Independence Day weekend here, this is our last show of the week. Then we're taking some time off for the holiday. Don't get suckered even by your own team and by your own patriotic nostalgia. All right, just because they've named flavors of the coffee after founding fathers doesn't mean it's good. The coffee is good. All right, so get it for that reason first, and then be proud that you're getting good coffee from people that name their flavors out of founding fathers. Amen. Go to firstcup.com. Use the promo code DACE, firstcup.com, promo code DACE for the discount. And don't forget, this is my last opportunity to tell you about this. We are doing a special, never before done here at Blaze TV. We're giving away a week of our content, all of it on Blaze TV for free. This offer expires July 4th at midnight. A 7-day free trial, no strings attached, to see what you've been missing out on and whether or not it's worth your $8 a month. That's how confident we are. We're giving it away for free for a week here for the long holiday weekend. You can go back and look at months, years of content maybe that you've missed and wanted to get at the time, but you just weren't sure that you should pull the trigger on a subscription to Blaze TV. Well, we're giving you an opportunity now. All right, we're handing you the weapon now and saying, hey, do with it what you will. All right, because you get a 7-day free trial at blazetv.com/Dace. blazetv.com/Dace. Promo ends July 4th at midnight at blazetv.com/Dace. All right, we are trying to jam-pack as much information into today as we possibly can with everything going on. Of course, we had some clips of this, really, I think, a landmark interview that RFK Jr., as Secretary of HHS, did with Tucker Carlson earlier this week. Mary Holland has taken over the organization he founded, Children's Health Defense. She's going to join us for reaction to that interview and more news in the MAHA space coming up here at the bottom of the hour. We'll do buy, sell, or hold at the top of next hour. A lot of your favorite topics and subjects we will address in one of your favorite segments of the week. And then we'll close it out with the prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, coming up to end the program today. But before we get to all of that, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by long overdue capitulation. The University of Pennsylvania has bowed the knee to the Trump administration, agreeing to a slew of concessions to the administration in relation to dudes competing against women on women's sports teams in the latest victory in the culture war. The Department of Education announced that it had reached an agreement with the university that included stripping swimming titles from Will Thomas, a famous dude who feels like a lady athlete. The university also agreed to ban biologically male athletes from female competitions, to restore all titles that female swimmers lost to Thomas, and to send a personalized apology letter to all swimmers. Save Girls sports advocate Riley Gaines, who competed against Will Thomas in the NCAA swimming championships, said she couldn't believe the development.
I feel vindicated. I feel like pigs are flying. I feel like hell has frozen over. So it is a fantastic day, of course, for sanity, for common sense, but I think more broadly for women, for humanity, for the little girl that I'm growing inside of me right now, that I will welcome to the world in just a few weeks. I think of her. I think of her future. That is what Donald Trump and, of course, Secretary McMahon and myself, that is what we are fighting for.
In other news this morning, Sean Diddy Combs was convicted of a prostitution-related offense, but acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could have put one of hip-hop's most celebrated figures behind bars for life. The mixed result came on the third day of deliberations. It could still send Combs, a 55-year-old, to prison for as long as a decade. Paramount has agreed to pay $16 million to settle a lawsuit brought by President Donald Trump that had alleged an interview that aired on CBS's 60 Minutes last year with Kamala Harris, his Democratic opponent for the presidency, was deceptively edited. The agreement in principle proposed by a mediator includes the plaintiff's fees and costs and will be allocated to the Trump's future presidential library. President Trump also said Tuesday that Israel has agreed to terms for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza and warned Hamas to accept the deal before conditions worsen. Trump announced the development as he prepares to host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for talks at the White House on Monday. Trump announced this morning he's reached a trade deal with Vietnam, which he says will include a 20% tariff on Vietnam imports into the United States, and Trump says complete access for American businesses in the Vietnamese market. Switching gears, let's check in on Tehran, Iran, where oodles of Muslims flooded the streets to show their love for Allah and beat their chests in a show of dominion of the Muslim faith. Just kidding, that's Dallas, Texas. A suspect accused by police of crucifying an elderly pastor in his Arizona home has given a chilling jailhouse interview confessing to his alleged crimes and revealing a hit list of other targets across the country he reportedly planned to murder before he was caught. Adam Christopher Sheaf, a 51-year-old, confessed to killing 76-year-old pastor William Shoneman, whose body was found in his bed covered in blood with his hands nailed to the wall on April 28th during an interview with Fox 10 News at the Cocochino County Sheriff's Office, where he's being held on charges unrelated to the killing of the beloved New River pastor.
Most people that would come into that scene, Bill's murder scene, would be horrified.
Sure,
Horrified.
that's right.
Were you feeling satisfied?
I wasn't, look, it's not in my heart to go around killing people.
You also have a family. Bill has a family. Did you think about that at all?
No, I'm thinking about the families that are in utter destruction, by following these false teachings and not obeying God and not giving our Creator the respect for giving families life to begin with.
How would you feel, though, if somebody crucified you?
Good luck trying.
Do you think you're a monster?
Do I think I'm a monster? No.
It's a gruesome killing of another person. Most people would consider that monstrous.
Sure, of course they would.
But you don't think you are?
No, I see myself as more of like a saint.
Heavily redacted FBI emails released by Chuck Grassley and FBI Director Kash Patel show FBI headquarters actively interfered with an investigation by FBI agents in Albany, New York, into alleged Chinese interference in the 2020 election. The emails show explicit efforts to interfere in the investigation in order to shield then FBI Director Wray from political blowback over his congressional testimony, where he stated there was no foreign interference in the 2020 election. And finally, an Independence Day tradition unlike any other.
Hey, hold on. 2 cars come. You got 2 cars come 2 different ways. Here you go, there. Bag up, Terry. Put in reverse, Terry. Put in reverse. Oh, Lord. What you doing, Terry? Terry, what's
And that's what happened while we were away.
That and the Earth Day one are rites of passage, man. Rites of passage, indeed. And where to go, Dad? I want to go. That one, too. All right. A quick question, and this will be the extent of my analysis of the Sean Combs trial. I believe this is...
Thank God. Thank God.
Todd was like, is it too soon to resign? All right. This will be the extent of it, okay? But help me to understand. Can you help me understand how you were guilty of interstate prostitution but not human trafficking? Can you tell me how it is possible? What world are those two things not the same?
Two thoughts. I was listening to this break as I came in today. My first thought was the conspiracy that this whole thing was just about making sure big celebrities were getting in line before the 2024 election. The second thing was what you just said. How is he guilty of this? I think the distinction, if I can be the actual guy, I think the distinction that they made is that prostitution can be consensual, but it's still a crime to transport them interstate, whereas human trafficking... Which is
the very definition of
human trafficking. So, consensual human trafficking,
there's consensual human trafficking?
Does not make sense.
Isn't Occam's razor at this point, there is just a very large sex cult at the core of everything?
I think at this point, yes. I think at this point we should. That's why I have no other analysis. Okay. I have no other analysis because I think that it's just really just that simple. Yeah. I just think that there's a collection of entities out there anxious to get blackmail material on people. And they are officially or unofficially associated with our government. I don't think it's really any more than that.
Moving on, then.
Yeah, so let's just move on. All right?
Awful.
Indeed it is. So here's what I want to do, okay? First of all, too, can I make a point also about, Trump now is just getting tribute. Like a good conqueror. You get the spoils of war. He's just getting tribute now from media entities. He conquered them to win. And now they're just like showing up in his palace, just paying him tribute now. And I saw, it's Red Steezy, that's his name?
Yeah.
I thought he made a great point on X this morning. He said, have you noticed how these media entities are making sure to pay Trump off before they have to defend themselves, and any of this goes to any form of discovery at all? Have you noticed that?
Yes, I have.
Just now, the darndest thing.
It is. Now, historically in our jurisprudence, what are some of the hardest lawsuits to win? Defamation, slander, libel. Some of the hardest ones to win.
Yeah.
But let me rephrase that. Some of the hardest ones to win if you are a public figure. Okay. All right. I think of what a Jerry Falwell battled Larry Flint at Hustler magazine for like a decade for putting in a disgusting cartoon, having him sex with a family member. It might have been his mom. I don't remember. I think that's what it was, but I don't know for sure. It was just vile and disgusting. And these are not easy things to win. I remember former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara tried to do one of these against one of the major networks. I think that it claimed many years ago that he essentially orchestrated the Gulf of Tonkin to get us into Vietnam. All right, it is not easy for a public figure to win these, and that's probably a good thing for the most part. If the social compact wasn't broken, okay? Because if the social compact wasn't broken, then we would probably all agree of various, we were in an intact social compact, and so we are, somewhere in this left of center, right of center, mainstream, where we go back and forth with each other, but largely America just drives down that lane, right? If we were still that country, then we would probably everybody would probably want a situation where we could say almost anything we wanted to about politicians, regardless of which side they were on, right? Yeah. Rather than give them any kind of protection or veneer of royalty or exceptionalism or elitism or being our betters, we would probably want to just let whoever the Dave Chappelle or Lenny Bruce or Richard Pryor of the era is, okay, or Shane Gillis, whoever the court jesters of the era is, just let them just have complete free reign to dissect our politicians and in public and remind them of the order of things, right? If we were being healthy, George Carlin, by all means,
yeah.
We don't want Carlin control, let it rip. Even if it's against my own side, that's probably a healthy, dynamic, and self-governing Republican, small r form of government, is for the political class to be pretty much open to any form of scorn and scrutiny, just if no other reason to make sure we don't put them on pedestals they don't deserve, right?
But we have Islamic Chaz's opening up in Dallas, Texas, so it's different than that.
Correct. So we are not in that era. We're not. All right. And so the social compact is broken. And again, a reminder, good idea for you to be reminded this time of year with Independence Day weekend looming. What is a social compact? All right. All right. So a lot of you think that the country began with the Constitution. It did not. The organic law of the country is the Declaration of Independence. And what happened is representatives, they had 3 for all 13 colonies, got together in Philadelphia that summer in 1776. And they essentially came up with a mission statement of values, of aligned values. And that mission statement is what became known as the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? They are laying out. So before they formalized a nation, they covenanted with each other that says, this is the kind of people we ought to be, that we want to be, that we are trying to be. So just like the day that of your wedding is when it began, but the compact between you and your spouse occurred before that moment. Otherwise, you don't go to the altar. Now, that social compact looked different in other eras when there was arranged marriages. That was still a social compact. That was families coming together. They had common vested interests, common values, all right? And then that was quantified or confirmed or codified on the day of the wedding. That is still how it works today. It's just the custom of what creates that social compact is different now. We have more of an emphasis on intimacy, love, and relationship, okay, than previous generations did. But still, within that love, intimacy, and relationship, there has to be commonality. that brings you guys together. Otherwise, you're not going to the altar. That's the social compact. All human relationships are governed by social compacts. All of them are. And once that is broken, then the confirmed agreement that binds them together is on borrowed time. Think of the couple who says, we're staying together for the children. That never lasts long term, does it?
Right.
Right. That tells you right away when they verbalize that the social compact is broken. All right. The social compact was broken in my own marriage a few years ago. God, thankfully, put it together. All right. Put it back together. Now it's stronger than it ever was before. Okay. And that can happen in marriages. Right. But if it doesn't happen, that marriage is probably not going to last. Okay. So every human relationship is governed by a social compact. What brings you together, binds you together in that relationship? Why are you and with them? And then why are they with you? And then there's some kind of ceremony in the business world, a contract. In the marriage world, a covenant or a ceremony, a wedding day. There is some kind of ceremonial confirmation of that compact. And that's what our Constitution was. It was the ceremonial. That's why it begins with the words, we the people. The people existed before the Constitution. We were already a people, meaning we already had a confirmed way of life. We already had values that we were aligned with. We already had a common missiology. Why are we together? We already had formed that, all right? So now we're just going to set the ground rules for, given those values, how we're going to live, with one another and handle our differences. And what you're seeing in the culture we live in today is because we don't have an intact social compact now. I'm not comfortable just, you end up with Kathy Griffin hosting Trump's head and bloodied severed head. All right. You end up with the CBS editing out. How many minutes was it? 20 minutes, something like that, of the Kamala Harris interview.
Right.
Okay. Which they never intend. What is the benign, innocent? Because if you had an intact social compact, what would happen is the media entity would want to demonstrate that they caught one of our politicians showing their rear end. And in fact, if anything, it would go the other way. Those would be the only 20 minutes you would see. And then the rest of the interview that Kamala Harris might be at least somewhat lucid and intelligent or mature, which probably is a very short part of that interview, but that would be the part they'd keep out. Because they'd want to play to the audience that wants to see the politicians brought down to where we are. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm, right.
That's the way it was. That's the way it worked even as late as when you and I were growing up. All right, you would be more inclined. Why was 60 Minutes the number one show in America for most of our childhoods and predating even when you and I were aware? Because you knew they were taking somebody down, whether it was on your side or their side, and at the end they probably deserved it. Okay, and people loved to see the powers that be brought down to their level. Okay, they loved it.
It was more like what made Trump popular on his own show.
Right.
It was, people thought it was fair.
Yes. Yeah. It was like, if Mike Wallace showed up, it was like the Grim Reaper appeared at your door. Okay. And do not ask for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. All right. But we're not in that country now.
To make your point even further, if they're willing to put their thumb on the scale on a presidential election, then they obviously are. That's the social compact part.
Yes.
In every other issue, in every other way, whether they're ignoring it or lying about it, they are lying about everything.
And CBS has a history of this. They did this with Dan Rather before the 2000 election. And that was kind of the first time I can remember where the rules of engagement of what I'm describing kind of changed. All right. Where right before the election, they basically made something involving George W. Bush and the Air National Guard.
Swift boating, right?
No, that swift boating was Kerry. So in 2000, they tried to make it look like he didn't really serve in the Air National Guard, I think it was.
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry, you're going back.
In the first time Bush ran.
Yes.
And and that whole thing got instantly discredited. Dan Rather, basically, his career's really never recovered from that. Okay. But that was the first time that I think we really saw malfeasance, an attempt to directly interfere systemically with an election, with something that was just not embellishing a scandal like, say, Watergate, okay, and making it look like, corporate espionage. Not saying that what went on there was good, but the idea that, this was the worst thing that's ever happened in the presidency is a presidential candidate tried to, spy on the political party he was about to beat by 30 points in the general election. That's, folks, I present to you Warren Harding. That's not the worst thing that's ever gone on in the White House, even though every scandal since then has been called Gate. That's an embellishment. It was a scandal. What went on there? There were some bad things that went on there. All right, but it's blown way out of partisan proportion. In this case, something was just made up out of whole cloth in order to impact the outcome of an election. And of course, in the Trump era, we've seen that go supernova, right? That's just a day that ends in Y around here. And so I think with a broken social compact now, people have to be held accountable. You just can't give people the rope that you used to give them before. They're not State Farm. They're not a good neighbor. They're not. Okay? That being said, these are still extraordinarily difficult cases to win. And the fact that Trump keeps winning these before billable hours actually get fully engaged, before there's a single deposition or a single discovery motion filed, especially, it's not like there's a bunch of local circuit court judges lining up to give Trump favorable rulings. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
And many of these lawsuits would probably have to be in New York, where many of these media entities are based, right? So, the same state that tried to put Trump in jail for 94 years because he may have not disclosed a hush money payment of a mere $25,000 to a porn star 20 years before this current, presidential election. That, I'm guessing there's not a lineup of Manhattan circuit court local judges just waiting to give Trump favorable discovery rulings. Probably fair. Okay. Fair. And yet, even in that environment, these media outlets are like, no. It's better off just to pay him off and move on. What does that tell you about what their methodologies and practices truly are? That even with the higher threshold to win these cases, even with favorable judges in many of the jurisdictions that these cases would be tried, they would rather pay Trump off than risk a single under oath deposition, than risk a single discovery fulfillment. What does that tell you?
Well, I wish it said really good things. I mean, it says they're guilty as sin, obviously, but perhaps less obviously, it says they are cutting their losses so they can live to fight and do it all over again another day. I mean, they aren't coming correct. They aren't reformed or anything like that. They have new lies to tell. They plan on telling them. So this is their way of surviving. They're cockroaches, Steve.
But what does it say that they're in survival mode right now? I mean, CNN is basically a shell of what it was 10 years ago. There's talk. Right now, it's just talk. But right now, there's talk of perhaps suspending the rule that allows pharma companies from advertising on these networks. FCC commissioner has talked openly about pulling licenses if it's determined that these networks, these terrestrial networks, are not operating in the best interests of the American taxpayer. Why should we be giving them all of this bandwidth, this physical bandwidth, if they're not actually serving? I think they feel as if they are on thin ice. And especially when it's been demonstrated now in 2 of the last 3 elections. I just want to reset this for people. In 2016, we had some semblance of a free and open social media. Who won? President Trump did. In 2020, it was censorship galore. Who won? Won, allegedly, the Democrat. In 2024, we had at least one platform that was free and open for the dissemination of narratives and information. Who won? President Trump won.
Exactly.
He has demonstrated that he has developed an alternative media ecosystem that can compete already with the existing mainstream and terrestrial ecosystem. So that, combined with everything that I just said leading up to that, I think they're scared. I really do think they're scared. And you know me, I'm not a Pollyanna, but I do believe that that's what we're seeing right here.
We've got about 5 minutes left to go in this segment. Since we're gone the rest of the week, let's kind of take stock here on the occasion of our 249th birthday. I mean, July 2nd was technically the day that the Declaration of Independence was ratified. It was announced and proclaimed on the 4th. Okay. So this is a kind of birthday. Okay. Pre-breakfast, I guess, instead of second breakfast. All right. Let's start here. If we had one word to write the social media status update of America, what would it be? What would be the one word? If you guys want time, I'll come up with mine. But
if
go
it
ahead.
were the relationship, the old school relationship status from Facebook, it's complicated.
Mm-hmm. So complicated to be the word.
Yes.
Just social media.
Just if it was in simple, meaning simple social media terms. Okay. All right. So if you were just going to do this and use one word to sum up the relationship status of the United States of America right now, and just in the simple, and we can extrapolate why you chose that word here in a minute. But if you could choose one word, what would it be? My word would be trying.
Yes.
That would be my word.
Yeah.
Trying.
That's something that in the first 5 months of this administration, we have people who are trying for this country, for the people of this country. That's regardless of whether you think they're effective or not, they are trying.
And I don't think that's elements of the people are trying.
Yes.
I mean, we have successfully pushed, all of the tactics I called for against abortion when I first started in this business 15 years ago, and then gay marriage, and not accepting the premise, going right after the head of the snake, we have largely and successfully done that against the tranny social contagion. I mean,
a few years ago, it looked like Sauron at the beginning of the first Lord of the Rings, just slaughtering people. Now it's being blunted in the process. At the very least, it's been driven back to Mordor and is reduced to an eye. Okay, maybe we haven't destroyed it yet, but it is not the conquering force that it was at the start of the movie. All right, so I'm going to say trying. I think what's debatable at that point, though, is how big of a hole are we in, and what will it take to dig out of it? But I think for the first time, I can say I feel like we are trying, and that's why I have kind of flirted with optimism at times here in the last 8 to 12 months.
The three of us all do shift in this game of musical shares, or where we in on every given day or week. I know I'm definitely the most overall pessimistic. It's not that I don't see what you guys see, but I guess I just see I don't know if I see a bigger hole, a darker hole, a sword of Damocles over us. So it's fractured.
Fracture to be your word?
Yeah.
I think that's a good word too, because I think that is also true. I do think there are locations. I would love, I want to be sitting here a year and a half from now saying, well, I've got something to compete with Kim Reynolds for the thing I've been the most wrong about in my entire career.
Oh.
Steve Hilton actually ended up winning governor of Cal. I want to believe, okay, that I want to be proven wrong, but I do think some of these places are so institutionally driven into blue hellhole status. In my human understanding, I fail to see how they could break out of them in my lifetime.
And while, again, there's a laugh track to say, let them learn the lesson they need to learn. Folks, we're talking about California, the largest state, and New York City, the largest city in the center of economics and all manner of other things. Like, if you don't think that's going to have a cost on you here in the heartland, that's crazy, which is, again, why I say fractured, and I can't not look at that sword of Damocles.
At the same token, though, it's kind of a compliment that they are getting increasingly radicalized, because I think that is also in response to the fact we are trying. So I think we are realistically trying. I'm sure if Daniel were here right now and he'll join us an hour from now, okay, he would not be. He might not be as optimistic about the attempts that we're trying as maybe I am. Okay, but we are trying for the first time in my career in response to their radicalism, and I think they're dialing the radicalism up all the more because they see us actually trying. That goes to what you're saying, the fractured status of the country.
I'm closer to Daniel's pessimism, but not for his reasons. Actually, to quote the great Steve Deace, this trying, whoever we is, should not have to rely so much on one person named Donald Trump.
I agree.
For the successes. That's not sustainable. Just starting with the fact that he's 80 years old.
I get people that ask me all the time, you and Daniel are saying completely different things for the first time in my, since I've been following the Blaze. And that's true, but it's not. I think we're both saying things that are true. But I think our perspectives are maybe different for the first time. And I'll let him, he's a grown man and smart, one of the smartest guys I know, so he can tell you where he's coming from better than me. Let me just tell you where I'm coming from the fact that I see all of Daniel's criticisms and think they're probably all valid to an extent. But I also see at the same time, the only people systemically trying to do something about what we're up against is that exact same administration. So I struggle with where to pick and choose my spots to say we can do better here when no one else is trying to do better than them.
Right.
More in a moment. Hey, I've got two questions for you. Number one, have you considered how your investments might unknowingly fund policies undermining traditional American values? And then number two, are your hard-earned investment dollars being used to oppose the Trump administration you likely just voted for and the agenda and the principles that you voted for them for? If you answered yes to those questions, or either one of them, you need to know your investment should work as hard as you do for what you believe in. They should align with what you believe in. Many conservative investors don't realize their portfolios include companies funding causes that directly contradict the scriptures, your belief system, the values you're trying to conserve. So as faithful stewards of God's resources, we've got both the power and responsibility to ensure our money supports businesses that honor those God-given principles, right? This is now the time to do that, to ensure your money supports businesses that honor God, country, family, the very things, faith that we're fighting for right now. Constitution Wealth can help you do that. Get started with them today with a free consultation. Constitutionwealth.com/blaze is where you can go. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. I know a lot of you have a long weekend coming up. What great timing to finally contact Constitution Wealth, get on their radar. Then the very weekend here, we're celebrating the 249th birthday of the greatest country on earth. Constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Get registered right now for a free consultation. And remember, at constitutionwealth.com/blaze, remember that Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. You should review their disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand their services and fees. And also remember, all investing involves risk, including the risk of loss. I am a client of the firm, and this is a paid endorsement, but my opinions are my own. Let's get the opinions now of Mary Holland over at Children's Health Defense. And there is a lot going on in the MAHA world. It is good to have her back with us here on The Blaze. Mary, how are you doing?
I'm great. Nice to be here.
All right. Thanks for joining us again here. I want to start with the landmark interview. I thought it was a landmark interview that Secretary Kennedy gave to Tucker Carlson earlier this week. And we kind of discussed it on our show, Mary. We determined it was almost like a movie trailer for this much anticipated report that both President Trump and Secretary Kennedy have been hyping up, that is forthcoming at some point in September, about the true root causes of this massive super-sized ascension in autism and autoimmune deficiencies in our culture. Are we on the right track with that, do you think, or not?
Yeah, I think it was also that I agree with you. It was a terrific interview with Tucker Carlson. I think it was also a response to all of the backlash around what happened at ACIP, right? The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. But for sure, Secretary Kennedy has focused on vaccines and on the kind of hidden harms for more than a decade. He knows a tremendous amount, and he did explain, I thought, in a really easy to understand way, why he thought that ACIP was corrupted and why he thinks that the autism science that the CDC has done is bogus.
What grade would you give your former partner in crime over there at Children's Health Defense so far, 6 months into this?
Oh, gosh, that's so tough, Steve. You know, he's got detractors on all sides. I was just listening to what you were talking about before. You know, he gets an A+++ for trying. On results, it's harder. You know, you can't move a mountain in 6 months. In fact, it takes years to move a mountain. And I think what he's actually doing is putting in place all of the levers so that he will be able to move it. But nonetheless, I think on food, on vaccines, on trying to reduce the bureaucratic waste, on trying to streamline things, putting good people in place, I would give him high marks. I'm not going to commit myself to a grade, Steve.
How do people understand how entrenched of a bureaucracy the likes of Senator Kennedy and the rest of that team are truly up against on a day-to-day basis?
I don't think they have any idea. And I'm sure you saw that a federal court just said that, no, he didn't have the authority to fire 10,000 people and streamline the agency from 28 units to 15. It's such a difficult, I mean, truly, he's in an impossible job. And I'm so grateful that he stepped up to do it, because there are so many things wrong with the American health landscape. And he's really trying to reorient the country and de facto the world towards what health really means, what it really takes. It's not one more pill. It's not one more vaccine. It's not one surgery. It's eating real food. It's exercising. It's having, a good life, basically. And all of those things together really will account for a lot of change in American health. We're eating really bad food. We've got medications that are really toxic, and we have got a money-driven system. We don't have a health-driven system, and he understands all of that. So as you said, like before, I don't think people were really trying to achieve health. I think they were, the institutions were trying to reap corporate benefits, and now they are really trying to reorient towards health, which is exactly right, but not easy.
We are starting to now get some landmark peer-reviewed studies on the aftermath of the scamdemic and the COVID jabs. You guys and several others reported on one that came out just last week. This was a peer-reviewed study involving, I think it was conception and fertility, 1.3 million person sample. So that's a fairly large sample. Can you tell our audience what it found, it's pretty disconcerting, frankly.
I'm not, remind me of the details. I'm not sure I know which story you're talking about, Steve.
It's the story about, it's from June 27th, the rate of successful conception, meaning a pregnancy leading to live birth 9 months later, for women who received the COVID-19 vaccine, according to this report, was, quote, substantially lower, end quote, than for women who did not take a singular dose of the jab.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, these numbers are not shocking to us at this point. We also worked on something called, My Cycle Story, which was showing early on a study of 6,000 women, all of whom didn't even take the shots, but they had side effects from being near people who had taken the shots. We know that not only the COVID shot, but the Gardasil shot before that are having really massive effects on fertility. And we did a film, Steve, that's on our website that I highly recommend to people called Infertility, A Diabolical Agenda. And that was vaccines that the UN and the World Health Organization supported the development of to be given specifically to reduce fertility. It's a very impactful film about a program led by the World Health Organization in Kenya to have women have miscarriages with no informed consent and absolutely complete fraud with devastating impact. So it's a reality that these shots, and not just the COVID shot, have effects on fertility. And when you look at the product inserts on most vaccines, you'll see that it says not tested for effects on fertility.
What did you think about the comments from Scott Gottlieb, former poobah over there at the FDA? He said a few days ago that if Secretary Kennedy were to go forward taking out aluminum out of the vaccines, that there probably wouldn't be many vaccines remaining on the market. What did you think of him saying that and saying it on CNBC for all places?
He's right on the money there, Steve. Aluminum, just like mercury, should not be in vaccines. They are known toxins. They're known neurotoxins. We're delivering these to babies who don't have a developed immune system. It's crazy, frankly. And so I think Scott Gottlieb was kind of alerting his audience that, there may be real problems ahead. And as we know, the pharmaceutical industry, and particularly the vaccine sector of that, is very disconcerted by what Robert Kennedy is doing as secretary.
I just found that to be extraordinary. This is the former commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, who is now admitting, because when I first got into this, and I really didn't know a lot about these issues, but I knew enough to know that it was kind of considered a conspiracy theory, that there were mercury and aluminum in these vaccines. I didn't even want to admit this when I first started doing this for a living 20 years ago. And now we've just gone from, we don't even want to admit that, to, I'm going to go on CNBC I'm going to alert the investor class that if you have big pharma stocks, now's the time to exert political pressure, because if we take the aluminum out, the supply chain is going to be so wrecked that your stocks are going to tank. That's to me essentially what he was trying to do there. I mean, that blew my mind.
Yeah, it is mind-blowing. And the reality is, Steve, so aluminum has been used as an adjuvant. Mercury was used as a preservative. And one of the decisions of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices a week ago was there's no longer going to be mercury as a preservative in multi-vial flu shots, which is great news, long overdue, 20 years in the making. Aluminum is basically replaced mercury for its adjuvantive effects, and it was already being used before. And there are other adjuvants. It is possible to make safer vaccines. Frankly, they've just had no financial incentives to do so because of the liability protection that the vaccine manufacturers have enjoyed since 1986. This is liability protection that Congress put into place.
Let's make sure we define for newbies to this space what adjuvant means. My understanding is it means ingredients inserted into a vaccine to theoretically prolong its efficacy, its antigenetic status. Is that correct, or did I have it wrong?
Yeah, so they have to add if you just inject the antigen, if you just inject the virus or the bacteria alone, the body may not mount an effective immune response to that. So they add something that is toxic to alert the body, oh my gosh, you have to recognize this bacteria or virus as something that is dangerous, and so your body will have protection against it. So the adjuvant is making the vaccine work, is essentially what Gottlieb was saying, and that's true. But there are alternatives to aluminum. They just haven't, much safer alternatives to aluminum. They just haven't had any financial incentives to go look for them. Because when you put in place a liability shield, the way that the vaccine industry has, you have no incentive to innovate or make things safer because you can't be sued. That's basically the world that we've been in since 1986 when it comes to vaccines. And as Bobby Kennedy well understands, we've seen this explosion of the childhood vaccine schedule. And then we saw the COVID epidemic, or the COVID whatever it was. And that was possible with these experimental vaccines based on the 2005 Emergency Preparedness Act, basically, from Congress. Is it
the position of you guys as an organization that you anticipate when Secretary Kennedy's report comes out in September, that it is the mass injection of these toxins as part of the mass vaccination program is going to be at least one of the major contributing factors to the skyrocketing amount of autoimmune disease and things like autism? Is that what you guys believe?
I don't know how far he'll get by September, Steve, but I certainly think that he believes personally, as I do personally, based on the data of the adding the shots and then seeing the rise in these neurological conditions and other autoimmune conditions in children, they go up absolutely in parallel. So the big task for him right now is analyzing the data that is Medicaid data, Medicare data, Health Maintenance Organization from the Vaccine Safety Data Link. He's got all kinds of data scientists now trying to use AI and other techniques so that they can really show the American public the data. He doesn't want this to be about his opinion, as he said in the Tucker Carlson interview. It shouldn't be about CHD's opinion. It should be the hard data. Here's millions of records. Here's what's happened over the last 30 years. We should be able to explain this, Steve. This is not rocket science. It's really not. We have a record of every vaccine that's been given in this country, and we know for all the Medicaid and Medicare people and the VSD people, Vaccine Safety Data Link, what happened after they got those vaccines. So I believe that I believe the data is going to show that we have a real problem here, that we have just not been analyzing the data, frankly.
2 minutes, final question. I think we had one of the strongest terms at the Supreme Court, particularly the last week, I can ever remember. But one disappointing case involved you guys. And it got my attention because I have filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission through my attorneys at First Liberty against YouTube for all of the COVID censorship it did against me and our show during those few years. You guys are trying to do something similar with Facebook, yet the Supreme Court has decided not to hear your case yet.
It was so disappointing, Steve. So, we filed this case before COVID against Meta Platforms, which is Instagram, which is Facebook. We said, you're working together with the CDC. That's explicit. You're a joint actor. You are together with the CDC. You're being coerced, or you're doing it on your own initiative, but you're not acting independently, and you can't work with the government to censor us. It violates the First Amendment and other claims as well. The trial court, this was sort of pre-discovery in Missouri v. Biden. They said, "Oh, this is implausible. Facebook made up these decisions all on their own. The federal government, and you have no evidence that they were colluding." So they dismissed the case. It went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and there was a fantastic dissent. So during that time, we kept sending them judicial notices based on what was happening in Missouri v. Biden, which was showing there was overt collusion. There was emails every day. The Biden administration people were calling up and haranguing them and abusing them, saying, "You've got to take down Bobby Kennedy, take down CHD, take down Steve Deace." And it's obvious that it happened. So the majority in the Ninth Circuit said, "Yeah, we don't have to look at that." The dissent was fantastic and said, "Oh my God, this clearly happened. You have to go back to the trial court." And then the Supreme Court just basically affirmed what the Ninth Circuit majority had said of we don't want to look at this. And the reality of what that means, Steve, they also essentially threw out the case Murthy v. Missouri, saying that the plaintiffs didn't have standing, which in my view was a wrong decision. But the bottom line to me is this government censorship industrial complex can rear its head again. The Trump administration has sworn off of it. This is something very important to Bobby Kennedy, but it does basically, we don't yet have a legal edifice through any case that's gotten to the Supreme Court that says, yeah, no, the government cannot work with social media or legacy media to censor disfavored content. And so it's a really disappointing decision, because we are in a danger zone. We understand from the Biden administration how easy this is. So it was very disappointing.
That analysis is why my attorneys at First Liberty decided to first, instead of going directly at them legally, first to file a complaint with the FTC in order to create the kind of platform standing you're talking about, via the government now stepping in to say, hey, as a regulatory agency, this isn't a good thing. So maybe that's a tactic that has a future going somewhere.
We're aware of that case, and we do have an antitrust case as well against legacy media that was coordinating with social media, and the government has just said that they are going to file a statement of interest.
Good.
So that may help us get to the same place. But the censorship industrial complex is a huge threat to every American.
Amen. Keep up the good work, Mary, and happy 4th. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet. You can follow her work at children'shealthdefense.org, children'shealthdefense.org. Any quick thoughts here before the end of the hour?
Well, that's why I said fractured. We've come so far, but what are we doing right now that can be sustainable after we have another president of the United States in 3.5 years?
Amen. And just kind of dovetailing, I mean, what she was talking about at the very end was what I was talking about at the end of last segment. Just look at the different elections and look at the threat of censorship in 2016, 2020, and 2024, and look at the results of those elections. There's a reason a couple of weeks ago when you announced this action with the FTC, Steve, I said this is an existential fight. It's not just in kind of an egghead, minutia, technocratic fight.
Your turn when we come back. It's buy, sell, or hold. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, Hour 2. It's our final hour of the week because we're heading out for a long holiday weekend, which frankly we need, because the next couple weeks around here are going to be pretty hectic. We're moving into our new studio space. I've got to go down to Nashville and back for a quick turnaround.
Double tapings every day next week.
Yep, we got double tapings to compensate, to make sure you guys have new shows and original programs while we're moving the studio, right? So this was perfect timing for us. We need a break. All right, because when we come back, we're going to actually have to look like we're working for a living for a change. All right, so that's what's lined up for the next couple of weeks. So before we actually have to demonstrate we have real jobs around here, we needed a few days off just to help. We need mental health days. Isn't that what the kids, the Zoomers call it today? I need a mental health day off of work. Okay.
No,
Todd?
No, they may call it that, but no.
You refuse?
Oh, I guess.
Okay. So let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can do that by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE, steve@stevedeace.com. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't forget to please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you love the podcast version of the show, thank you. Please leave us a 5-star review, whichever podcast platform you prefer. Maybe if you got a long weekend too and you're bored, just go to podcast platforms you didn't even use and leave us a 5-star review there too if you don't mind. Please also hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow. That way you'll know that every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your podcast feed every single time. Aaron, do you know? Help me understand the algorithm that says we have 2 of the top 15 shows in the entire religion category, and yet there's 30 podcasts ranked ahead of us. Can you help me understand how that
we
math
seem
works?
to be experiencing technological differences.
I have no idea how that works. I don't know how we have 2 of the top 15 episodes trending in one of the largest podcast categories on planet Earth, and yet our overall show ranking, there's like 30 shows rated ahead of us. Does that make any sense? Anybody know how that math works? Should we ask Tom Tillis? Hey, Tom, do me a favor. Put on that Western pendant thing again, and maybe you can help us figure that out, right? Get your mind right, maybe? Anywho.
Nothing says North Carolina like bolo ties.
Yes. Oh, anywho, where were we? Oh, yeah. Don't forget about our friends also over at Beam Dream. If you want a good night's sleep, maybe you've got a long holiday weekend, you want to catch up on some sleep, Beam can help you with that. I've used Beam many times, gotten great results every single time. It's a hot cocoa. Now, don't let that freak you out. You're not adding, if you're intermittent faster like me, I know a lot of you are, all right? You're not adding a bunch of carbs and sugar right before you go to bed, all right? You're not going to break your fast, okay? So it's made with a lot of healthy ingredients that give you not just to make you tired, but give you the restful sleep like magnesium, melatonin, and others. Natural ingredients. You just mix a little of it before bed. There's numerous flavors. I do the chocolate peanut butter myself, all right? And you are guaranteed to get the night of sleep that you need to wake up rested and ready to go take on the day, Dr. Laura. Right. So this is also a company that, again, shares the same values as you. So here's the deal. Beam is giving you guys, as part of the show, the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off to try their best-selling Dream Powder. Get up to 40% off for a limited time by going to shopbeam.com/Steve. BEAM, as in Mary, shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Steve using the code Steve for up to 40% off, so you can sleep better, wake up stronger, and be ready for your family, your faith, your freedom, etc. Shopbeam.com/Steve. Use that promo code Steve. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, Daniel Horowitz is going to join us. We have some news that could be a couple of breaking news, one from my home state, in fact, that could be very impactful about the 2026 midterm cycle. And so I'm going to get one of the most astute, sharpest political minds I know to give us his reaction to that and more coming up here at the bottom of the hour. But you ready for some buy, sell, or hold?
Always.
All right, let's crank it up. Now, we did have to ask Aaron for once to actually rank the best submissions.
Yeah, sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, because we're not going to be able to do bonus buy, sell, or hold in the overtime today because your daughter's going to be here to run a victory lap, something she's used to doing.
Yes.
But this time in the court of public opinion, not on the track. Right?
Yes.
And it's what Aaron mentioned during the montage. The reason we didn't talk about it is because we've got an entire segment coming up in overtime to discuss it, all right, with Ainsley. Okay, so we are going to get to as many of your prime choice buy, sell, or holds as we possibly can. You know the drill. We have not seen any of them. Aaron selects them. Todd, you and I are going to decide, are we going to buy it? Are we going to sell it? Should you use the hold, you have degraded the dude code, so you must be forced to do something that is degrading, all right? And if you use the hold, you've got to help Lindsey Graham see fireworks this weekend, brother.
Baby, you're a fun. People love my singing. I know that now.
Yeah.
No.
That's going to be a no for you, dog.
It is.
All right. Commence.
All right, first up, though, I have brought some show and tell. This might be my favorite 8-second video of all time. This was posted this morning by Lloyd Legalist on X.
He's good. That's a good account to follow.
And this is from a worship service. I don't know when. I don't know where. Listen very carefully for this 8 seconds. Buy, sell, or hold.
This next song is one I wrote myself. It's about humility. Let's go.
Steve wasn't even watching.
Yeah, I wrote about humility. I saw the whole thing. Let's go.
Did you see the pyrotechnics?
Yes, and the pyrotechnics after? Yes, which demonstrate a lack of humility.
Next, we go to Luke O'Halloran.
I saw it. I saw the whole thing. What?
Luke O'Halloran is next. Or
Just your
first.
show. That's names over your left shoulder there.
Oh,
Steve's not even watching the content.
I saw it. I did. I saw the pyrotechnics go on, and then I got a text from my wife that made me look down. All right.
Luke is first, who says,
I'm sorry you hate me for trying to be a good husband and being open and receptive to my wife.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
There it is.
Was that good?
Well,
did I pull that one out at the right time?
It's something. I don't know if it's good.
All right, go ahead.
Luke has this. I would be happy to pay into Social Security for the next 10 to 20 years, knowing I would never receive anything back if it meant we could get rid of it at the end of said time period. My children would then be free of this government-imposed theft and be able to invest that same money. Buy, sell, or hold. This is a good, albeit difficult, solution to the Social Security problem.
I think it will probably take something like that, so I'll buy. I think it would take a generation to essentially say, we will sacrifice for the next generation in order, because I do think people that have paid into this should get what they paid into it. Theft works both ways, right? So I've brought this analogy up before. There was a civilization that tricked the Israelites into not conquering them. And when they found out they got tricked, the Lord made them keep the covenant they made, even though it was in violation of his own covenant, because the higher value was to keep your word, right? That you let your yes be your yes, your no be your no. The Lord has bound himself to his word for us. And so we are bound by our word for him, okay? You gave your word, even under false pretenses, your fault, you got tricked. You have to keep your word. We did give the previous generation our word if they paid into the system, right? So theft works both ways. They should get their money. I don't have a problem with giving their money. I do have a problem with, hey, on the way out the door as we leave the next generation with unprecedented cultural rot gut and $37 trillion in debt, can I not pay taxes on my payments from the biggest welfare program in the history of planet Earth? I kind of have a problem with that part of it, but giving them the money that they paid into that. What it will take is collectively a generation that will say, we will just bite the bullet on this one and pay this thing off.
Somebody's getting shafted somewhere.
Because short of that, then the only other thing I can see that causes this to end is a situation probably none of us want to have to live through or experience, frankly. Okay.
I'm selling, but not because I don't dig you. I mean, I see, sir, that you, like me, appreciate a fine selection of vinegars. But we don't have a church that can come close to making this happen. We don't have men that can come close to making this happen with this level of sacrifice. And all you have to do is just look around you and what our current idols are. What you're asking is impossible.
Yeah, the electorate wants lower taxes, freebies, and a lot of other stuff. You can't have lower taxes and endless freebies, but that's what the electorate wants over and over again. Next, we go to Alex, who says, upon our death, we are instantly with Christ. Yes, we are not resurrected until his second coming. Those still alive will experience the passage of time, but not the deceased, because there is no sense of the passage of time once dead. Perhaps this is an explanation of purgatory, buy, sell, or hold.
I will sell because I don't believe in purgatory. I think absent with the body is to be present with the Lord. So I will sell. So it's really up to you if you think that is a good characterization of what you think about it.
Well, I mean, obviously, I do believe in purgatory. The instantly part, what it means in terms of space and time, I have no idea, nor does anybody else. But biblically speaking, yes, your sins are forgiven, but the scars of living with sin the cost of just being part of the human condition will be purged, and you will be made whole in the Lord. That's what purgatory is. So is it a state of being? Is it a place? Is it a process? These are not fighting hills to die on, but it is. But Catholics have biblical citation for whatever you think purgatory is. That it is a cleansing and a perfecting process of some kind. What it means in terms of time, we don't know that as it relates to purgatory or anything else.
Next, we go to Uncommon Joyce, who says if Trump would exert his influence on the RNC, we could see a recreated MAGA party dislodging the old guard and putting in fresh leaders who are more in line with MAGA. It wouldn't be a wholly constitutional conservative party, but it would no longer be Democrat light.
This angle I largely agree with. If you're talking about the intra-party infrastructure, I definitely think he has more power there than trying to move existing members of Congress. Okay. I think that's extraordinarily difficult. Even for Trump. I also think that there is more power to clear people like Tom Tillis out in primaries than Trump has exercised so far. Because to me, what you're really talking about, whether you're talking about going to the party infrastructure or you're talking about, Trump being more aggressive in primaries, is you're really laying out a process where you dam the river at its source rather than attempting to move a bunch of people who are already getting all kinds of, payouts and protection rackets from K Street once they're already under they're within the city limits of DC. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That at that point, they're in the mob. They're made people, and it's just much harder to get rid of them at that point and to move them because they have powerful shibboleths protecting them that have power in their own right. And we're here before Trump got here, and they're going to be here long after Trump is gone, probably. So if you are talking instead about going to places where there's more of an opportunity to clear things out, the primary system would be one, and the party infrastructure process would be another. The only thing I would sell on this is this last election demonstrated Trump just completely bypassed the entire party operation himself, just created his own party within himself. There was no GOP get out the vote effort. It was done by third parties like Turning Point USA and others. Okay. Trump got rid of the RNC chairman in the middle of an election, Ronna McDaniel. Okay. So, he may have already rendered it to be largely an irrelevant body. But that's more subjective than your previous point, which is this is where more hay could be made, is at the infrastructure level, and that I agree with. I'll buy.
I agree with just about everything you said, just devil's advocate. I will sell because Trump is 80 years old and only has so much time, and what he needs to confront here can face just kind of riding that out like cockroaches do. And so that's tougher. And plus look at how much work he has to do just doing the job of governing and not party building. I mean, it's already been the list of accomplishments so far, and what has to happen in 3.5 years. There's only so much you can ask that one man to do. So in theory, I get it. In practice, I really think you're asking too much. And Congress is kind of winking and nodding and confirming what I'm saying on a regular basis.
Let's go back to Brutus. I don't mind taking the same people if they have good submissions. Who says,
is he the new Constantinus Roditis?
Maybe. Todd is correct about sports bro culture. However, the rise of sports bro culture is a result of everything being politicized, and people just want an escape and can't even get it now because sports have become so politicized.
I'm going to sell on this because that's the original reason we had this before the sports in and of themselves became politicized. So Todd's point is, as far as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, and the reason I want to answer first is I want to make sure I understand your point, okay? Your point is the fact that people are still tolerating this after it's been politicized indicates that they are giving it, that it's now not just an escape for you, it's a way of life for you. Is that your point?
You're living to escape instead of escaping to live.
Yes, exactly. So that would then contradict his point.
Correct.
That's why I sell it. Yeah.
Yes.
Next, we go to Josiah, who says receiving a signed sticker slapped to the inside of a book is not the same as receiving a book that has been physically signed by the author.
I physically signed the stickers. We put the stickers there so that they wouldn't smear. That's why we did that. Okay? They're laminated stickers. We did it that way so that they wouldn't smear. I physically signed, and it's inside your book, which I physically signed. So, not surprisingly, I'm going to sell on this one.
What was this person?
Josiah.
Josiah is a good name. Be gentle. We'll just politely disagree. Josiah is a good name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't drone me, bro says average 30-year fixed-rate home loan mortgages will not get below 5% until sometime after 2028.
I'm going to sell on that because I think Trump may send some B-2s to the Federal Reserve if that happens. Okay, but if your argument is it may take that long for the natural economic conditions to cause interest rates to go down that far to take hold, we're going to sound a lot like the guy who's going to come up here in about 15 minutes. Okay, but I think Trump's going to create conditions for that to happen. Because I think he understands that he cannot fully realize the political turnaround that he wants in ways that people would feel it politically without that. So I will sell. But you're not crazy, theoretically, for suggesting that at all.
I think I have the exact same answer. I am going to sell because by then moving would be nice. But you aren't crazy.
ID Crisis says best case scenario for New York City is that radical Islamist Mayor Zohran Mamdani will set off the Biden effect, resulting in New York City 2.0 at the end of the term.
I tend to agree with this. I just think they haven't suffered enough that this has even gotten this far. Okay, so I will buy.
I'm selling.
Two spirits.
Wow, Todd's selling on increased suffering. I have to be wrong then. I have to be wrong.
I agree on increased suffering, and I also agree that it's only the way to make possible what you're talking about. But there's a huge chunk of me, of Aaron in me on this, and Aaron alluded to it, I think it was earlier this week, maybe late last week, that is, do they care? Can they be... I mean, they're cultists. I don't know if it'll work. And it's not just New York, it's the entire left coast. You see in the topic of gender that we just talked about, we're going to be taking a victory lap, a much needed victory lap by my daughter, but the demons still are fighting and fighting hard. So that's why I'm selling, but I'm all for more suffering.
There's something, keep talking. There's something.
I mean, hell exists. Hell exists for a reason beyond being a theory, and it's just because some people actively choose it.
Hey, Todd.
Yes?
Why did the B-2 bombers have to fly 40 hours nonstop?
To get to the other side?
No. Because I ran so far away.
All right, I was just looking this up. What do you think the turnout was in the Democrat mayor primary for Zohran?
It was like, was it 1 or 1.8 million?
Yeah, but in terms of turnout percentage of registered Democrats in the city.
It was, I don't think it was super high turnout.
No, it was 30%. Kind of goes to what you're talking about. I mean, here's a guy openly running as a communist, and 70% of New York City Democrat voters. He's running an aspirational campaign by his worldview, and he's out in the open. He's everywhere in the national media. 70% of New York City's registered Democrat voters were just like, yeah, I don't care. I mean, you'd think you'd have an opinion. You'd either want to affirm it or not. This is a pretty. I mean, this guy is clearly represents a sea change, right? 70% of New York City Democrat voters just were like, I went full Bartleby the Scrivener. I would prefer not to.
The scene from The Matrix when Cypher says ignorance is bliss and he wants to go back into the pod
and
is
he cuts the steak. Yeah. That he knows is not real.
A lot of New Yorkers there.
Yeah.
All right. We've got about 17 more to get through. Let's go rapid fire as fast as we possibly can in the next 9 minutes. Two Spirit Gerbil says it's not a proper Independence Day celebration without fireworks, quoting John Adams.
I'll buy for the most part.
Yes, buy.
Next, we go to Alan Kunzel, who says small modular reactors will be the final solution to our electric power and grid needs.
Because it's anything other than windmills, I'll buy.
I'll buy.
Michael Relicki says, after listening to the overtime earlier this week, the individual that will become the Antichrist will not initially realize they are the Antichrist. It'll be a growth of sin from believing what they are doing is the best for everyone until they fully let Satan take over. It's the deceptive path of how Satan always reigns, just on steroids.
I could see this. I don't know that I'd make it an absolute, but I could see it. I'll buy.
I'll sell as I don't think it's the only option, but nothing that you said sounds implausible.
Natural Born Texas says the Trump-Musk X fight is staged for the purposes of helping Elon get this business back on track, allowing Doge to operate under the radar and possibly some other things we are not aware of.
I will sell.
Yeah, I will sell because we tend not to do four-dimensional chess. I have thought about I mean, if you were going to do some degree of emotional manipulation four-dimensional, these two guys would be like, I'm all in. Let's act like crazy people. I mean, they'd have no problem doing it.
We wouldn't be having round two.
But that's exactly what I was about to say.
I'm just, I'm with you. I am selling, but I have thought about this option with these two guys.
Joe Allen says David French is in need of a good exorcist. In 2018, he writes a piece for National Review about refusing to bend to trans tyranny. In 2025, he succumbs to it in his New York Times article.
I'll buy.
Him and what's his nuts over from Weekly Standard, who used to be
Crystal.
Bill Crystal. Like he's like I'm for getting rid of ICE. I mean, both of these guys, are they being held hostage, literally, in some way, shape, or form? Like we were paying you all along to be shills, and now you cannot. You cannot let go of the ghost. I mean, it seems like they're literally, we have something you love, very important to you. You're going to do exactly what we say when we say it.
That's what Joe is saying. He says these guys are in need of a good exorcist.
Yeah.
He's being held hostage.
Okay, then bye. It's phenomenal.
Coach Okra says the paradox and logic of the Democrats wanting to not solve a problem but to keep it as a carrot is that the GOP is afraid that if they do solve the problem, they'll be voted out of office.
I think that this is just a general aspect of duopolistic politics, okay, regardless of system. Okay, I think that something like this would have largely existed at any point in the two-party system era since post-Civil War. So this is just the ecosystems of duopolies. So I think there is at least some truth to this. It's probably, though, not the driving prime directive that maybe you think it is. But I think there's some truth to it, so I'll buy.
Yeah, there is a buy. I mean, especially among Democrats. I mean, they can't solve the problems because those are a lot of jobs and votes. And so, yeah, there's something in there.
Ethan McClellan says the PGA will either have to strike a true deal with Live Golf or convert to a similar format in order to keep any big-name star in the future.
And I thought this happened already.
That's largely where we already are. And they've done it already by letting the Live guys still golf in the majors. Yeah. So I think that some form of merger is coming here. So I'll buy.
Next, we go to...
This is golf's turn, like with the NBA and the ABA and the NFL and the USFL. It's their... Or the NFL and the AFL, I mean. It's their turn now. There'll be a merger.
Trey Satterfield says peak decade of cinema was in the 80s. Back to the Future, Goonies, E.T., Breakfast Club, etc. We won't ever experience American cinema like that decade again. We can thank Spielberg for that wonderful decade of movies. The 90s are a close second.
I would sell that it was peak. I would say the 70s was better. But I will buy that we'll probably never see a decade like the 80s again. Given how captured these institutions are. So you guys decide, am I buying or selling? I wholeheartedly buy the second half. I do not buy the first half.
I'm selling because cinema, strictly speaking, I mean, that Scorsese, he still talks about this, the death of cinema. I mean, that's the 70s. 80s is popularized cinema, big tent movies, the stuff, which is also great, but trying to find that balance. And now there's all kinds of forces, even if the content is excellent. There's just all the things Steve talked about a couple of days ago that just people don't want to get up and go do much of anything and leave their house. So that I don't think it's 80s is the obvious and only answer to the best. No.
Joe Lynch says one can find better theology in most metal, hard rock, and old country than any modern Christian worship, i.e., The Lord of This World by Black Sabbath.
If you understand that you're getting the nefarious angle, then I would agree. If you're telling me earnestly, straight up that that's the case, I sell. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
If you understand that you're getting it from the upside down, then I agree. It's true from the upside down point of view. But if you are seeking truth there as an affirmative case, I would sell.
Okay, I'll buy.
Anarcho-Catholic says the 26 midterms are going to be a major rout of the GOP, setting into motion political drama that hasn't happened before. Think Trump impeachment and conviction, Vance impeachment, installing Speaker Jeffries in the White House, House of Cards in real time.
This is on the table for sure. So I'll buy. This cannot be dismissed because that would be the result of your typical 30-seat midterm loss next year. This would be the result. Okay, so you can't take that off the table right now. It's a year and a half out.
Bye.
Cardo says the Fantastic Four will flop bigger than Elio.
I also don't think you can take this off the table. I think it's entirely possible. The Marvel brand is hanging by a thread right now. Okay, hanging by a thread. So I wouldn't predict it, but I can't take it off the table, so I'll buy.
Yeah, agree.
Bruce Logan taking a crack at the top 10 biggest historical figures who had, or in the case of number one, have the greatest impact on the course of history as we know it. Just whole cloth buy-seller hold this list. Number 10, Christopher Columbus. 9, Julius Caesar. 8, Constantine. 7, Charlemagne. 6, George Washington. 5, Johannes Gutenberg. 4, Martin Luther. 3, Alexander the Great. 2, Muhammad. And 1, Jesus Christ.
I don't know that I'd order them that way, but that's a pretty strong list overall. So I will buy.
Yeah, if you like that list, I read a book 20 years ago probably. It's called The 100, and it's got the 100 most influential. I think that's the word it uses. And it's a really good, it's like a 10-page read on each person and why they places them there. But like number 5 is the inventor of paper.
Yeah. Now I will tell you, maybe the biggest name other than Christ is not on your list, although your list overall is strong. Charles Darwin is not on that list. Has to be on that list.
That's a good pull.
Okay. But overall, your list, strong. Strong list.
James Moon says, at the rate things are going to the United Kingdom, we should start questioning whether they should be even trusted with nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Bro, that is prophetic. Yeah. Holy crap, man. You just made my heart hurt with that. I got to buy. Yikes. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is like a Tom Clancy novel waiting to happen for the reasons you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Andy in Florida, top 10 TV and sports personalities of the 60s and 70s for Lindsey Graham, Dick Van Dyke, Dick York, Dick Sargent, Dick Smothers, Dick Cavett, Dick Van Patten, Dick Button, Dick Vitale, Dick Ebersol, Dick Mata, Dick Butkus.
Here's the thing. A lot of those are legit names.
Yeah.
I mean, Dick Ebersol is along with Rune Arledge, is the father of the modern sports media. Okay. I mean, a lot of those are legit names, so that's what's even better about it. So I'll buy. Yeah.
Are you saying we should make Dick great again? Is that what?
Nice.
Dave Reed says
thank you, Lindsey.
Steve is gay for getting a pedicure.
Well, that was
it's debatable. I got one yesterday, man. I feel great. Right? Wife finally talked me into it.
Aaron,
and so am I gay? Am I gay?
Aaron, do you see the clock?
Am I also retarded?
Got out of this segment.
That'll do it.
By the way,
in more ways than one.
Those poll results are pretty split right now. I put it up there last night.
It's going both ways. Yeah.
I hate all of us.
It's 39% yes, obviously I'm gay. It's 36% that I'm not just gay, but gay. And 26% said and retarded, to be honest. So there you go. Daniel Horowitz will join us next. Hey, back here on the Steve Deace Show, we're powered by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. You know, we had to give them one last plug before we head out for the long Independence Day weekend after the show today, because for more than a decade, they've been on the front lines of building the parallel economy, fighting for our God-given rights, and with a product all of us pretty much need access to thrive in modern America. So you can ask the hundreds of thousands of Americans, our family is among them, who have made the switch, or they're now supporting causes they believe in, simply by joining Patriot Mobile and still getting a great product as well. All right, switching easier than ever before. You can activate in minutes from the comfort of your own home. Keep your number, keep your phone, upgrade, switch, whatever you want to do. Also, you may think you're locked into a contract. They've got a contract buyout program up to $500 per device, so ask them about that. Maybe they can help you get out of that deal with the communist company you're paying your money to, all right? And they've got a great U.S.-based customer service team of people whose talk you can actually understand. All right, so go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve if you want to make the switch, and they'll get you started with a free month of service with that promo code. So a free month to get you started. Promo code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve, using the promo code Steve for the free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, we now welcome in the prophet of woe and lamentation. Daniel Horowitz is here with us. Good to see you, my brother. And let's start with some late-breaking election news, shall we? There is now an announced challenger to Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, and it's a former lieutenant governor in the state of South Carolina as well. So someone with some form of a statewide presence. I know Graham's been challenged many times before. One cycle he had 5 primary challengers. A lot of times it's a really conservative, really based state legislator, okay, or maybe a pastor or a business person, but they're kind of a new a new name in the political circle. Here he's going to be challenged by somebody that has a statewide political presence there in the Palmetto State. Do you think he needs to be worried or not?
No, I don't. I don't. We hate every rhino except for the specific ones that exist. It's like there's this abstract neocon globalist rhino we don't like.
Nice.
But then it's like we hate Israel so much that, like, look at what Lindsey Graham is saying. But then, like, Trump endorses Lindsey Graham and we don't get him off of it. So look, Steve, you're talking to a guy, and this is in your state. I literally a half an hour ago just had on former state senator Jim Carlin, who's challenging Joni Ernst. And Joni is in many respects worse than Lindsey Graham. I mean, Lindsey Graham panders a little bit more now. I mean, Joni is a full spectrum, foreign policy liberal, social liberal, big time. Trannies in the military, mandated gay marriage, and fiscal liberal. She is literally the reason why the Green New Deal survived the Senate bill. And we have a real live challenger. I mean, and it's like everyone's like, here, she's got to go. And well, until you have a challenger, and then she doesn't. So, Steve, I got to see it to believe it.
All right, let's talk about my home state of Iowa. I have it on very good authority that State Attorney General Brenna Bird, that we've all been operating under the assumption she was going to run for governor. I think it's very clear that she is the White House's choice, at least as far as the president is concerned. She was the only statewide official that endorsed him in the last Iowa caucus cycle. She even went to the courthouse. She was the only state attorney general in America that went to the courthouse in New York last summer while they had Trump literally on trial for his life there. He is on record, numerous clips talking about what a great governor she would be. She actually put out the day, right around the same day, Congressman Randy Feenstra, who's the Rhino congressman out in western Iowa, right around the same day that he announced he was running for governor, she put out a compilation of clips on social media of Trump talking about what a great governor she would be. I also am told she's the only the prospective, at least up until this point, she's the only prospective gubernatorial candidate in Iowa who got the coveted Susie Wiles West Wing White House chief of staff interview. And she was slated to speak. She was the only statewide official slated to speak tomorrow when the president comes here to speak, at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. I was told this morning she is calling VIPs around the state to say she is not now going to run for governor. All right. So this puts a lot of our state home primary in flux. For example, I was seriously looking at this after Governor Reynolds shocked us that she wasn't going to run. And then when I did my due diligence and ran it up the flagpole to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and saw that it was very clear that this is who the president had his eyes on. Yeah, I'm learned my lesson, man. No, I'm not running against that force of nature anymore. Okay.
No.
So as of right now, there is not an obvious Trump loyalist in this gubernatorial primary. Feenstra is not the only candidate. There's actually a very well-liked and pretty conservative black member of our state legislator. I know him, Eddie Andrews. Very well-liked. He has a very right-wing voting record and in a swing district, too, okay, in the suburbs. So he's running as well. So what do you think this does for the Iowa gubernatorial race?
Well, Steve, I know someone else who lives in Iowa. Look, I'm glad you're talking about this today. I really am, because what I'm saying is the upshot of everything going on in D.C., if you take kind of the lowest common denominator of what every faction is saying, if you want to put it in a defensible way, it's we just don't have the votes. We just don't have enough power. Okay? I mean, whether you agree or disagree with that proposition, that is the sum total. That we don't have 60 votes for anything. We're not going to fight on a debt ceiling. We're not going to fight on a reauthorization debt ceiling bill, appropriation bill, and then even budget reconciliation. Well, but the parliamentarian, and even without that, we don't have 51, even not just 60. We don't have 51 because the rhinos we keep endorsing, yada yada. Okay, so we're not going to get anything done. So we have an election. We will rock you. We're going to do this, and then actually. Well, what do you expect? How do you get to 51 votes? Okay, fine. So then what that leaves us with is states like Iowa that have turned very red, where you have supermajorities, where the public really is kind of done with the Democrat Party. So you should be able to floor the gas pedal. I think yesterday a lot of people have finally taken the adage you and I have been talking about for so long, national, hey, well, if DeSantis is doing all this kind of freelance stuff in Florida, why don't we have 25 other states where we're doing this? So I think gubernatorial primaries in red states should be the hottest commodity. That should be our number one focus, especially if you're one of those that's like, but the parliamentarian, but the filibuster, but the lack of votes, the coalition, but the courts and all that stuff. You have an obligation to floor the gas pedal and to create a permanent sanctuary for our way of life, so that when we have the next Joe Biden style administration that's even worse, we're not subject to live under what we did from 2021 to 2025. So I think that's the context that you're talking about, a wide open race where Kim Reynolds is a pretty good governor, but you would want to advance from her, certainly not go backwards. Particularly, we saw that with the land ownership issue. So no pressure, Steve, but wide open there.
I think that a lot of people are reconsidering since I put this report out this morning. It's not made the local news yet. I'm the first person to report this. So I think in light of the largest, by God's grace, I've built the largest media presence the state of Iowa has ever seen that's ever come out of our state. So a lot of people learned from me today this news. And I'm going to tell you right now, just you and I know how this racket works. The amount of people who are reevaluating whether they considered running for this has dramatically changed. Okay, there is one other official that's close in Trump world, one of our state reps, Bobby Kaufman. His dad Jeff is the chairman of the Republican Party of Iowa. He may now reevaluate whether to run, thinking that because he's maybe the last Trump loyalist left in our state. Remember, a lot of our state's political leadership, along with the governor, was for DeSantis in the last caucus. Okay.
Yep.
And so Kaufman is probably the last person left with a realistic chance that's a Trump loyalist. He may say, I get that lane to myself now. He'll reevaluate. I could see if Joni is not going to retire. There's been rumors off and on that she is, and Ashley Hinson, the congresswoman, will take her position, and then Pat Grassley may run for that seat. I could see Pat Grassley now say, with the gold standard of that last name in our state, I could see him now say that he would run. Okay, I think there's a lot of people reevaluating things, including yours truly. This was not news I was anticipating. I will say this to the audience. I did tell somebody at the White House about a month and a half ago who asked me about this. I did tell somebody at the White House, I thought there was a 70% chance that Brennan was going to run, but 90% of that is because you guys want her to. She's done a fine job as state attorney general, but Todd can tell you, she came in here right after Kim, said she was going to run again, met with Bob, came over and saw us. That did not look like a woman that was very eager. We said this to one another after she left, guys.
She looked like she wanted to get out of this room as fast as possible. She
did not look like she was very eager to step into that space. Okay, and credit to Brenna. She
deserves credit.
She had advantages that no one else was going to have. She's won statewide and was going to have the support of the White House, and she just made the decision that, frankly, being around her 8-year-old son at 5 o'clock every day was more important to her than running for governor. Congrats to her for that level of self-awareness and saying no to ambition that a lot of other people, frankly, would not have said no to, regardless of their politics. So, but it's the landscape in our state here. has dramatically changed. And we're still the first in the nation caucus state, so there's still a lot of national people talking about this too.
And Steve, look, this is where my passion is. I even just on our network an hour ago, I asked Jim Carlin why he's not running for governor. And I gave him a hard time with that. Now, that was before I knew this announcement. But my belief has always been, if you have a star and you're thinking of running, you run for governor. The Senate's a toilet. By the way, we could only get 21 people out of the 53 behind the proposition of repealing Biden's Green New Deal. That was like the universal, hated thing for the Biden era. We're not talking about anything fancy here.
We couldn't get the votes to take illegals off, able-bodied illegals off of Medicaid. We couldn't get the votes for that out of the Senate.
No. So the point is that's not changing. If you're going to run statewide, have to raise the money and name recognition to do it, you may as well take a look at Florida and look at what you're able to do as the chief executive of that state, and you run for it. And I'll say this, Steve, too. I mean, again, no pressure, but times are changing. I know enough about politics of Iowa, but also that part of the country, that this landowners rebellion is really a sea change. I agree. So we saw it first in South Dakota, where 15 rhinos were knocked off, and then they wound up, it was actually just enacted this week, banning carbon capture, grift, eminent domain. But then in Iowa, I never thought that the House and the Senate could come together to pass something like that. The governor did veto it, but I think the fact that there was enough support does tell you that sort of corporatist old guard is losing their grip on the state.
I love Kim to death, you know that, okay? Yeah. But this is the first time in her 10 years, I have disagreed with her enough to break with her publicly, given how overall good she has been. I can tell you that she set up the next session, her last as governor. This is going to be the defining issue. I can tell you right now, conversations are already being had, okay, about we're going to war on this one, day one at the legislature. And that session, when it starts in January, is going to be right in the dead middle of that entire gubernatorial primary. When it starts to kick into high gear after Christmas is right when the session will begin. And this will be a front burner issue. And you're going to have to be strong on it. Randy Feenstra had 40% in the reddest district in Iowa. He had 40% in his own primary vote against him for a guy who had no money, no name ID, just out of spite on this issue alone. Okay. So you are correct. These are the kinds of parochial issues that when you're covering this stuff from up here, and I know about it because I live in Iowa. I don't know the parochial issues in South Carolina and Tennessee. I don't live there. Okay. But these are the kinds of things that when you get surprising results that you don't see from on high, it's because of this kind of flashpoint that was going on the ground that you just can't see from a national vantage point. This has become the ground zero for the property rights battle in America. The state of Iowa has been, and you're going to see it really rearing in the next session for sure, right as the primary is happening.
No, there's no doubt about it. And again, it ties into the mismanagement of land, taking it out of service of farming and ranching, the Green New Deal, the global warming lie, foreign interests. It's going to tie into some of the AI data center stuff. This is a big, big issue. We have lamented for years that where's the cavalry? Like, where is everyone? We talked about Lindsey Graham. You're like, do you think he's going to lose? I don't think he will. Mm-hmm. But this issue is the one time we woke up one morning. It was last year in the summer, South Dakota or late spring, South Dakota primary. And it just, they all got thrown out. I mean, leadership got thrown out, the majority leader whip, and they got a conservative majority and speaker who's now running for governor there just on this issue alone. And it's not going away. And you had a ballot initiative there. It was like 10-1 funding wise because the other side has a ton of money, and the grassroots won. I mean, this is one of our strongest issues. I gotta say, Steve, once we're on this, it is pretty telling how in the House bill originally, the federal, the whatever BBB bill, that they had a provision banning states from regulating the carbon capture pipelines. So I think they noticed that now that was taken out in the end, thankfully. But I would just say, Steve, like, look, I have an excuse. I'm in Maryland and I'm too short to run for office. But Steve, you're looking good. You lost a bunch of weight. Hey, the time is calling.
Thank you, brother. Good to see you. Have a happy 4th.
Happy 4th. Take care.
You bet. Gentlemen, your thoughts about the conversation we just had with Daniel?
Do you think for 4th of July he has an American flag in his lawn or the Senate is a toilet flag?
Yes. They are side by side. They are side by side.
Well,
yes.
There's no, what do you think I should be? I'll what the Steve Deace said. This is immediate feedback. There's like zero ambivalence from Daniel. He's like, do it now.
I think I need a 4-day weekend. And
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
This because I absolutely believe Brenna was going to run. She didn't look to me. I'm not, well, let me put it this way. I'm not surprised watching her personally. She chose not to. Yes. But professionally, it's just very rare for someone to say no when the White House wants to draft you for something as high profile as this. So credit to her for following her heart and going with what she thought was true to her.
Let's also hang on and wait until tomorrow has concluded. Because I imagine, isn't she speaking at the Trump event?
Tomorrow, she's supposed to speak at it, yeah.
Let's just, hold the horses until that's over.
Daniel's point about running as it applies to specific issues on the ground that may or may not be your passion project, I just think that's such an important point about, it's not just a particular, there's so many factors. There's a particular person at a particular time with particular issues with the party, with a particular psychology. I mean, like you said, that is the lay of the land next year is apparently going to be what it is along those lines. And that's just one more factor that you have to digest because you just have to accept reality as it is. And how are you capable of playing a game of cards at that table?
That's going to do it for us this week. We are heading out to enjoy a nice long weekend. We'll be back. Hopefully a lot of you get to do the same thing here in honor of our nation's 249th birthday. We will see you again on Monday. Until then, Romans 8:28.